This is me, Kimberly Belrose, and you are at 6:33 Wake Up. And I have a little bit more important information about my story before I just fly with whatever God is doing in my life day to day. So, this is episode number 3. I hope that you are sticking with me. I need you to make this fly. And oh well, it is what it is. Hit subscribe. But I ended my story last episode with, how God changes us from the inside out. And so I told the little story about at my kitchen sink washing dishes, and I said something the wrong way and felt very convicted on the inside. So if you watched episode number 1, I am a new Christian in April 1990, and I was a married woman living with my high school sweetheart, who was not my husband, and 2 little kids when I became born from above, when I got this supernatural revelation that there is something entirely different than believing that there is a God. There's something entirely different than believing that Jesus is the Son of God. It was a supernatural encounter experience that began to change me on the inside out. So this is me, and I began reading the Bible in the book of Matthew. And I was in Matthew chapter 5 reading my Bible one day, and my little girl was down for a nap, and I was reading not the Message Bible at the time. I currently am in the Message Bible. That's a whole nother story for another day. But hint, you have to be obedient to what the Spirit is leading you. So that is actually a very good title for this episode, because I was reading in my rocking chair an afternoon. Little girl laid down for her nap, and I'm reading Matthew chapter 5. And it said something like this, because I was a different version. But it says this, verse 27. You know the next commandment pretty well too. Don't go to bed with another's spouse. But don't think you've preserved your virtue simply by staying out of bed. Your heart can be corrupted by lust even quicker than your body. Those ogling looks you think nobody notices, they're also corrupt. Now, it goes on, and I don't want to take up a lot of time with this, but it says that, verse 31, remember the scripture that says, whoever divorces his wife, let him do it legally, giving her divorce papers and her legal rights. Too many of you are using that as a cover for selfishness and whim, pretending to be righteous just because you're legal. Please, no more pretending. If you divorce your wife, you're responsible for making her an adulteress, unless she's already made herself that way by sexual promiscuity. If you marry such a divorced adulteress, you're automatically an adulterer yourself. You can't use legal color to mask a moral failure. So the Bible I was reading, and that conviction, that sick feeling that I came under this afternoon that I was reading it, the revelation was, I'm a married woman living with this man who I love with all of my heart. And now I have this revelation that if this book is true, I am responsible for taking him to hell. Yeah, so the book is pretty clear when you're reading it, that there's a heaven and there's a hell. There's life and there's death. We're all living and we're all going to die. And when we die, we go to one place or another. I'm not the judge. I do believe this book is truth. And this book says we go one place or the other. And it says that Jesus is the way, the only way to get to heaven. So it's not just believing that there's a God, because even demons believe there's a God. There is a supernatural way that is different. So here I am this very afternoon, and I am totally convicted that because I'm a married woman, I'm taking this man whom I love straight down. I cried. I got right down on my face that day, on my floor, in my living room, and I wept and I prayed and I cried out to God that it didn't matter to me what the truth was, that he needed to show me the truth for today in my life, in his way, his perfect will for my husband and I. I cried and cried. I don't know how long I was on the floor. And I got up off the floor and I grabbed some snot rags and I blew my nose and wiped my tears away. And I picked up my Bible and I just opened my Bible, people. I just opened it back up on my lap. And through my tears, honest to goodness, this is my story. This is my true story. The only words that I could make out through my tears on that page, and I remember as clear as it was yesterday, in the Bible I had at the time, those words were right here, in this spot. Now this Bible, they're over here. And it was Romans 7, verse 4 that I read that day. And it said, "So my friends, this is something like what has taken place with you. When Christ died, he took that entire rule, the dominated way of life down with him and left it in the tomb, leaving you free to marry a resurrection life and bear offspring for God." I knew that I knew in that moment that I was free to marry my husband, currently free to marry this man. Now, here I am, a married woman, so there was some pieces that God had to work out. I had to get divorced and I had to get married, and and I'm honest. I have promised to be open, honest, transparent with you people. And this is true. I did not quit sleeping in his bed. I did not quit living with him at the time. But God worked out a lot of details in amazing ways, and I'm here to tell you that story. So then something else that happened that I want you to know, because as we go forward in this show, I want you to have some clarity from my life in ways that God can speak to you. So, I shared in the first episode, that it was a supernatural encounter that led me to be born above. In my second episode, I talked about that sick feeling on the inside of me that I knew I broke his heart. Now this, we just talked about how, I just opened the Bible and there was the answer. I didn't hear a voice. I didn't, I had some pretty heartfelt, true emotions that day. But the answer he gave me was right out of the Word. Now, it wasn't long. I kept reading my Bible and going to my church. Excuse me. And I came under clear impression from the people that I went to church with that I couldn't be a Christian and smoke cigarettes. And I'd been smoking cigarettes since I was 5 years old, really. I know that is an absolutely terrible story, but it is true. The first time I got caught with cigarettes, I was 5. I was completely addicted by the time I was 11. And someday I hope I'll tell you the journey of quitting smoking, because it was pretty intense. I've only been a non-smoker successfully, this time, for 14 years. And the truth is, I miss it every day, and God knows my heart and knows that I miss it. But back in 1990, only a few weeks, a month, that I had become born from above, and I was going to my church, and people begin to whisper or to tell you things to help you grow, and it's kind of reminds me of the story in the Bible that, King little David and Goliath story. If some of you know that, David was a warrior for God, and he had a slingshot, but King Saul wanted to protect him and put on his armor on this young boy, and it was too big and too awkward, and he couldn't be himself and be the warrior that God had trained him to be. And so often I find that us as believers who've been around the mountain a few times, we're always trying to offer other people advice. And sometimes I think we're trying to put our own armor, our own ways on young believers, and we all, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody else, but we need to trust God. We need to trust God that He knows how people got messed up, and He knows how to unravel that mess in His timing. And we do need to pray with those people, but we need to be encouragers, and we need to build up and not tear down. We need to exhort. We need to speak hope and mercy and grace and love, because we're not under that old law anymore that says you gotta do this way and you gotta cut that off and you gotta do's and don'ts. The relationship of being born from above is not a rule-keeping relationship. It is, here, this is Sylvester. This is my beautiful cat, and he is very spoiled, and he loves his mama, and he will be introducing himself as a guest many times, and I apologize for his butt shots. Anyways, so back to my smoking. Thank you, Sylvester, for getting me back on track. So there was a particular day, I have all these words, whisperings in my mind that I need to quit smoking. And I want to quit smoking because I love God and I want to please Him. I want to please Jesus. So I'm praying and praying and praying and trying to quit smoking, And I'm sitting in my chair with my journal and my Bible. And suddenly, on the inside of me, and I don't know how to explain this, maybe, if I begin to describe my flower garden, it's completely overgrown and a mess, and the creek that runs through it is dried up, and, the cuttings that I have laying down, and the butterfly bush is huge, and it's got all these dead blooms on it, As I am explaining it, I'm also seeing it not the way it is. I can't see out my door right now. It's pitch black. But I'm seeing in my memory the way the flower garden looks. And if I'm describing it, I'm thinking that you're using this part that God designed within you as an imagination, a capability that you can visualize and see maybe my flower garden. So this is what happened this day. It is like I'm praying about quitting smoking, and another part. If you're watching a television show and you're really intent on this movie, and someone else picks up the remote and changes the channel, suddenly you're going, "Hey, you're watching something else, and you're, what am I watching? Well, that's kind of what happens when I have a vision. That's what I'm going to call them, is a vision. And it didn't happen on the outside of here that you could see it or that I saw it take place. It happens on the inside somewhere. And it's like God picks up my remote and changes my channel. And that's how often he can show me things or even speak to me. That something is suddenly in there and I am listening rather than, and it's not going through my brain. I'm not thinking about it. So this is kind of what happened this day. I'm suddenly watching, like in an empty factory, an empty warehouse. It's like an empty warehouse. But in the middle of this warehouse was those like cardboard boxes, that you see that people store old papers or old files in, boxes about yay big like this. And I'm watching, and there's this stack of boxes in this room, in this warehouse, and they go up almost to the ceiling, people. And there was things on words on these boxes, and they were things like unforgiveness, judgment, hurt, rejection, worry, poverty, identity. I don't remember what all the words were on these boxes, but at the very top of the box was a package of Players Light cigarettes, and that was the brand that was my favorite and that I smoked at the time. But in the warehouse, this hand comes down from the ceiling and grabs this package of cigarettes and puts it on the bottom of the pile. And what I heard was, and I didn't hear audibly like you're hearing my voice today, what I heard on the inside of me is a voice that, I wish it sounded male, but it doesn't. It sounds like me, but it doesn't go through my brain. And I heard this voice say, it's not what goes into a man that defiles him, but it's what comes out of a man that defiles him. And I knew the fear of God in that moment. And I knew that God had a plan to unravel my mess, and that I needed to submit and surrender to his way and his timing. And so, did I always stay there? Oh gosh, no. It was 20 years off and on of me trying to deal with my smoking. I dealt with it, God dealt with it. I dealt with it, God dealt with it. That's another story. But today, I want you to know that God knows you, and he knows whatever mess you're in if you're in one. I figure if you're on this side of heaven, you've probably got a little bit of mess going on. I'm not completely unraveled yet. The Bible says that God works out our salvation, and I believe that that's him unraveling our mess. So tomorrow, who knows what we're going to talk about next episode. But today, I want you to know that God knows you. He knows where you've been, he knows where you are, and he knows where you're going. As Bobby Conner says, if you can fog up a mirror, he's still got a plan for you. So, couple of things, right? This was unprofessional. I don't edit. So this is it. You get the real deal. This morning you get me in my nice morning robe, and you are at 6:33 Wake Up, because I'm sharing my life and my story and the Message Bible. I have a passion for us as believers to wake up the believer on the inside of us, to live like we actually believe out there, to believe that the things that happened in the Bible, visions, God talking to you, God unraveling you, you being set free, us being different than the world around us, that's the reality of a believer, and we should be expecting that. If you're not expecting God to talk to you, you're not going to recognize it. If you're not expecting that you can have a vision or a supernatural idea, then it's not going to happen. If you're not expecting opportunities to pray with people and pray for people and actually see results, then you're not going to see it. Let's wake up and live like we believe. So, I pray that you hit subscribe, that you follow me, that you help share my story. I pray that you go to my website. The link is below, and you can learn more about me and what I do. You can see my blog. There's, a connection. You can find me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. I'm just starting. It's just going out there. And, I need you. I want to go live with these videos. I need 50 subscribers to go live. Will you be one of them? I just want us to get insight of what it looks like, what it can be like. I want more. There's always more. And I'm trying to encourage you as my viewers to want more of this supernatural life. It is an exciting adventure, and I want more. So today, I pray that you will be blessed and that you will go and be a blessing. Okay? Live different than the world around you. Bye-bye.